Welcome back to our podcast where each and every week, Doug Larsen, the COO of Safeguard Recruiting, and myself bring you the highlights, tips, tricks, and everything you need to know to improve law enforcement and first responder recruiting. In today's episode, we're pretty excited about because we have Chief Scott Hughes on the show. Now, Doug, Scott really brought it home when he talked about leadership and retention and building cultures in agencies. What was your big take from our discussion with him?
All right, it's pretty exciting to have a chief on showing that example of leadership, understanding what the officers want, what it takes to keep them happy and healthy in this environment.
Yeah, it was exciting. He pretty much blew the concept of a recruiting crisis out of the water. No, it's about leadership. It's about culture, about making the right decisions. So without further ado, here's Chief Scott Hughes. Well, it's an honor to have Chief Scott Hughes on the show today. He's been in law enforcement since 1997. He's a highly regarded trainer and subject matter expert who attended the 291st session of the FBI National Academy. He leads Crosden Consulting. He hosts Two Chiefs and One Mic podcast. He's a police chief in one of Ohio's largest growing suburbs. There's more to mention, Scott. We won't take all that bandwidth to do it. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Travis. Thanks for having me on. How are you doing?
I'm great, man, and I appreciate you being on. I think so many in our audience, they need to hear from leaders out there that really have sort of missed the landmines of the last decade, and you certainly have done that. You just crossed a decade as police chief. It's, as I often said, it's one of the most difficult jobs out there because you're often pulled so many different directions. But I think I wanted to start off by asking you started law enforcement, and I will say almost 30 years ago. You're coming up on it.
Yeah, buddy.
What's the biggest difference you've seen when it comes to leadership in that time frame from then until now?
Oh, well, that's a loaded question.
Well, that's why I asked it. I love it. Yeah.
I think the first thing that comes to my head is we have seen such a change in not only who we're hiring, but who we're promoting. And you look back over the last handful of years, man, a lot of experience has walked out the door. A lot of experience, a lot of good cops have gone out the door for a plethora of reasons, mostly being the attack on the profession, the lack of support from elected officials, courts not holding people accountable. And these cops just said, you know what, we're out of here. And when you lose all that experience, you got to fill those ranks. And we're filling those ranks with folks that, 15, 20 years ago, they're not getting promoted. Not that they may not be qualified, but a lot of it has to do with just not only work experience, but life experience. I've looking back on my career at the time, the agency I worked for, I was the youngest sergeant ever promoted at that department. I was in my early 30s, and I was like, crap, I might be too young. It all worked out at the end, but, we're promoting kids now. And I say kids, not being disrespectful, but we're promoting these officers now that are still in their 20s to supervisory roles when they still haven't figured out life yet. And again, I'm not trying to sound rude or disrespectful, but you ask what I think the biggest change is. I think that's one of them is we're promoting folks younger, don't have life experience, some of them don't have work experience. They haven't done the job long enough. They haven't seen the ins and outs, the nitty gritty. They haven't been on some of those calls. And now maybe they're having to make a personnel decision, a discipline decision. They're helping write policy and procedures. And, they haven't been on some of those runs yet. So you lose some of that human touch, if you will. And then I think the second part is a lot of these folks have forgot where they've came from, quite honestly. I see bosses out there at all ranks, from chief all the way down to supervisor. And I see some of the decisions they make or hear some of the things they say. And I just shake my head like, were you ever a cop? Like, did you ever work third shift? Did you ever work at a bar when two drunks were pushing each other and one of them just didn't want to be escorted out? Like, have you ever done that? Because if you've ever done that, then that explains to you why your officer had to use maybe harsh language or maybe had to appear aggressive. And that stuff, I just kind of shake my head at because I couldn't imagine working for that person. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, I think what has happened, and I'll try to bring this around to what you're saying, and because I've seen this myself, is if you lack the experience of doing the job and you get in positions of leadership, whether that's chief, captain, sergeant, or whatever, the easy default is to lean on academia, right? We can all open a book and read a book. We can all look at a study. We can all go to your favorite IACP conference, Scott, and I'm sure you have a favorite one, and have someone tell us what to do. I mean, I worked for a chief one time where he said, before I make a decision, I call my other chief buddies on the phone. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So you see these decisions being made in a bubble. And so when you see certain policy decisions, you see certain officers getting in trouble for what is, as you described, for the context, perfectly legal, justified force. I think because they're leaning on academia. And if you're like me, Scott, you shake your head when you read some of the stuff that comes out of academia, because these are people that have literally never done the job, that are doing it from a book. And we have to have, and when we do that, I think that comes down to hurts who we're promoting, it hurts who we're trying to hire, it hurts recruiting, it hurts retention, because we're getting away from that sole mission of the job, right? I think that's why you've had so much success, and I want to get to that, because you understand the job and you focus in on, hey, we have one mission here. Yeah, there's a bunch of other stuff out there being talked about, bunch of people complaining, there's a bunch of people coming after us, as you said, this attack on cops, but it doesn't get in the way of the mission. Kind of speak about that mission-oriented focus on leadership that I know you've had so much success in.
Well, I think I have to start off by saying, it's not all rainbows and sunshine anywhere you go, right? You could be the best leader out there, and you're dealing with people who are going through personal problems. You're going to have personalities that are going to rub each other the wrong way. You're going to have a person on a shift who doesn't like the sergeant. And this guy doesn't like that person. You're always going to have that, right? Outside of that, I look at a successful organization as one where, outside of those little tiffs, are you taking care of your people? Do they have the tools, the equipment, the resources to do their job the best of their ability? Are they allowed to make a mistake and not feel like the world's going to come crashing down on them? Are you helping them get better? Are you developing them? And I think that's what sets certain organizations apart from others, is never forget that you're dealing with humans. You mentioned academia, and it's easy to manage black and white, right? I can go to a policy manual, flip the page and say, see right there, look right there, it says you can't do X, Y, and Z. That's easy. What's hard is to lead in the gray, right? And that's what I try to do as a chief. And that's the message I've tried to promote from my position all the way down, and anybody who will listen to a podcast or go to a class I teach. It's try to promote the message that it's easy to manage in black and white. It's hard to lead in the gray. And law enforcement you can't run a law enforcement organization through a policy manual. There's just too many unknowns. And when leaders figure that out, I think in some ways it's almost like a breath of fresh air, like, oh, this is what I can be doing. And I don't want to attack lawyers, but I think sometimes, and I hate to say but, because it cancels out everything you just said, but I think sometimes lawyers interject and they drive decisions, and we start seeing things like hand grenade management, right? One person messes up in District 4, we throw a grenade out and we punish the 1,200 other cops in Districts 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 because of one thing somebody did. And the fallback is, well, the policy says, and if we don't enforce this, then blah, blah, blah. Well, that doesn't mean that's I don't believe you can run an organization like that, right? And that's what works for me. So, it's easy to fall back on that policy manual or procedure manual, but you got to remember there's a human element to things. And before we start recording, you're not in your hometown right now. You're getting ready to represent an organization doing some expert witness work. I do that same type of work, and I read these reports, I read these cases. And there's always a human element to a lot of the decisions that these folks are making, and leadership's no different. Remember that you're leading people, you're leading humans who are going through things, and blah blah blah. So I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
I think what makes your opinion so unique, Scott, and why I'm so glad you're here is you're not in this bubble. Like you travel the country, you provide training, you provide consulting, so you're talking to cops probably every day around the country.
Yeah.
What are you hearing from them? I mean, they have to be telling you some of the things you just talked about, right? I mean, what are you hearing from people currently in the profession today?
A lot of folks who were disgruntled might be the right word. Folks who are stuck. I don't know what you're seeing, Travis, but I've seen for probably the last year, at least from the lateral side of the house, folks lateraling from department to department. It seems to have slowed down a little bit, and I think what's happened, is officers are they were able to get out of those environments that they were in, and they've got themselves somewhere now that's better than what they were in. But they're still even the ones that from the outside looking in you think are really good. They get in there and they're like, oh man, like it's better than where I was, but man, if they would just do this, this, or this, man, this could be the greatest place ever. And that this, and this is often associated around leadership, around taking care of your people, around we don't have the right equipment or the tools and the resources to do what we need to be doing. It's funny. I made a social media post a couple weeks ago. Our mechanic here, when they service your police cruiser, when they put the little sticker up in the corner that shows how many miles to your next oil change, my mechanic writes, "Have a great day." And I made a post about just like that speaks volumes about him and his character and how much he cares about the fleet that he maintains. Right. And somebody commented, "I wish our cruisers had that low of miles on them." And it's little things like that. Yeah. Like, there are so many, not to get off on this topic, but there's so many programs out there that organizations can look into and update their fleet for a pretty minimal fee and keep their fleet up and running. But a lot of organizations are just stuck doing things the way we've always done them. And they can't, you talk about a bubble, they can't get out of that bubble, right? This is what's always worked, or they think it's worked. So we stay in that. So that's what I'm hearing. And then the other thing that I'm starting to hear, which is interesting, which you may not even be prepared for this, is I'm hearing we need to get back to being cops. We need to get back to doing the job that we signed up to do. And let's go out and let's start arresting people. Let's start putting people in jail. Let's start holding ourselves accountable because we owe it to the community. Now, that's easy in some places. It's a challenge in others, right? Because you still have you still have jurisdictions around the country where the cops can't do anything right. So every use of force is scrutinized. Every pursuit is criticized. Everything that they do is being looked at through a hindsight, Monday morning quarterback microscope. So the cops are like, hey, listen, I'd love to go out and be a cop again. I want to be a cop again. We signed up to put bad people in jail. But everything I do here, if it's not internally, if the sergeant, the lieutenant who has no idea what the hell they're talking about is beating me up about it, if the chief's beating me up about it, the courts are beating me up about it. So those people I feel bad for, right? Because they are like that's got to be a tough environment to work in. Here in my county where I am in Southwest Ohio, we don't have that issue, and I brag about that. And that's one of our biggest recruiting tools, right? I'll recruit the heck out of the people in these big cities around me because they know they're going to come here and get supported. And our county does our whole county, not just my department, but all the departments up here in this county. And you see this around the country, right? You get outside of these metro areas that oftentimes are less supportive of law enforcement than the areas that surround them. You see these suburbs just taking all these good cops. And outside of those folks, we're seeing cops, outside of the ones that are stuck in those regions, we're seeing cops getting back to doing cop stuff. And I think for me, when you see cops getting back to doing cop stuff, you start to see the officers change and you start to see the morale improve. You start to see the culture get better because they can go out there and they can do what they want to do. But you have to have supervisors and leaders that are going to let them do that, and they have to know that they're going to be supported. And I've always said, and I've been on a podcast with you before, if you do what's good, not bad, right, not wrong, you're going to be fine. That's our philosophy. That's what works. So,
yeah. And Scott, I'll just be forthright with you. In this so-called recruiting crisis, I don't believe in it, but if you do believe in it, then we've been talking and we've been saying this since 2020. Oh, recruiting crisis. But we're several years past that, and you're still seeing agencies across the country that are significantly down, continuing to go down. I mean, I spoke to a potential client for Safeguard Recruiting the other day, and he goes, "Oh, we're down 20%." And I go, but we're pretty happy because our academy class is this size now. And I go, well, how does that match up with your attrition? Oh, goes, oh no, we're losing more people than that academy class. I go, well, so you're still going down, but he was just happy because it was a larger class than normal.
So we've lowered the standard. We've lowered the standard.
And I said, listen, brother, I said, if you don't do something about this, you're not going to be 20% down. You're going to be 22% down, 24% down, 20. You can do the math here. And I said, so where do you think this so-called crisis, and it's a complete myth. I think you've just described we have a leadership issue. We don't have necessarily a recruiting issue. And we also have an issue of we can't recruit like it's 1995. You can't just sit back and expect people to come bang down your door. You have to actually do some things differently because there is a new generation like you described. Mm-hmm. Do you think they're going to realize at some point, okay, maybe it's not because if we say crisis, it's almost like a built-in excuse. Well, it's just a crisis. Well, Scott, if it was a crisis, you'd be having a problem. Everybody'd be having a problem. But the truth is, only some agencies are having a problem. And so do you see a time, and I hope it comes, that people are going to realize, okay, maybe we need to do some things differently. Yes, maybe we need to lead differently. Maybe we need to support differently. But yes, maybe we need to build our processes differently. Maybe we need to actually reach out to these folks when they apply immediately instead of wait a month, right? Some things that we talk about here at Safeguard Recruiting. Do you see them finally coming around to that? Or, I mean, honestly, I have days where I get pretty depressed because I'm like, bro, we're 5 years into this and I'm still hearing the same things from people. What do you think the future holds?
I think, yes. I think, you talked about this bubble a couple of times. I think agencies have to get out of that bubble and do things different. I'll use my own agency as an example. We needed a complete makeover on our recruiting flyer. We don't have as many openings as some of your clients do. So, we may have 1 here, 2 there, 3 there, but we don't have this, we don't need to fill 50 spots. But even an agency our size, and I'm your typical suburban size agency in America, our flyer, just the whole image of that flyer needed an overhaul. And I've said this for years, the best ideas don't come from this idiot with these eagles or stars on his collar. It comes from the guys and the gals out there working the streets. And one of my newer officers, he might even be on probation still, quite honestly, Travis, he comes to me and he says, do you mind if I update our flyer?
Yeah, get after it.
Go, right? And he comes to me and he's like, and he used some software and he brings his laptop in my office. He says, can I show you what I came up with? And he shows me this and I'm like, holy smokes, boom, that's what we need. And we made a few changes, right? And tweaked it up a little bit, just changed some fonts, moved a couple things around, but it was completely his idea. We put that flyer out. I can tell you 2 weeks, we've got 2 openings. We got over 10 people that applied just through a social media post. We didn't do any advertising. It was just, we put it up on our social media platforms and I asked my people to share it and boom, just like that. And we've already had some guys and gals come in and do some ride-alongs and we'll get the people we need off this. But all that to say, that idea came from the guys on the streets. It didn't come from me. And, cops are all about word of mouth. And you're never going to make everybody happy 100% of the time. We already talked about that. But if you can make 95% of these people happy 95% of the time, I think we're doing things the right way. And word of mouth travels, right? Word gets out. Hey, this is where you need to go. This is where you need to go. This is where you need to stay away from. And actually, that's been really great for us.
Yeah, your best recruiters as your agency are your own officers. And so
right.
When you alluded to it, Scott, when you lead them well, you take care of them, they're talking to other people. Consequently, if you're not doing things the right way, they're talking to other people. And so I haven't dug into your data, but I have a feeling the reason you're able to quickly get those applications is because you have a bunch of employees that are pretty happy there and they're telling everybody else about it, whether it's their friend group or social media or whatever, and they're willing to actually share it. We have some clients because we have a referral program, because we know that the employees are the best word of mouth, but it's kind of odd. Very few clients will take that, will even want to participate in that. And I'm thinking to myself, man, this doesn't cost you a thing. Just plug this into the system we have, and it's just going to exponentially help everything. But then when they do, sometimes there's a lack of the employees sharing it. So that's a sign. We don't get into those deep-seated leadership issues oftentimes with our clients, but I think recognizing, hey, if I build employees up and I make them excited about the job, they're going to talk to other people about the job, and that's what you're seeing there, I believe.
Yeah, we are. And it's funny because when I when I made the social media post, I asked the officers to share it, and I was impressed with the high percentage of folks who shared it. And it's because of those shares that we've got, for us, 10 interviews scheduled, which is good. That's a good number for us, for being, 7 days out from when this thing even occurred. So, I'll take that all day long, because I can talk to my buddies around me here who are, we got nothing, or we got one for 3 spots, or whatever the case might be. So, yeah, word of mouth. That's kind of disheartening to hear that you have clients who aren't taking you up on that referral program, because I think those are your best cheerleaders. But to your point, some of it probably there's deeper issues there with why people don't want to promote it or help, because they're not satisfied. And you mentioned crisis. Now it's kind of an excuse. I also think we got to be careful with still letting officers be lazy and use leadership as an excuse, right? What I mean by that is, we really encourage cops to do nothing for 2020, right? Between the drama going on in the world and COVID, we were all like, hey, just don't do anything. And I think some agencies, because it's easy to be lazy in law enforcement, the leadership style has adopted that. Just don't do anything. If you don't do anything, you're not going to get use of force. You're not going to get involved in anything. You're not going to get in trouble. Just don't do anything. And we owe it to our departments, to our people, to our communities. We gotta put that to bed. No pun intended. We gotta move that to the side, and we can't fall back on that either as an excuse, because the people you hire, they don't want to come out here and be lazy. We allow them to become lazy. And so we have, like, I'm all about balance, right? I'll look at both sides. We have leadership issues. There's no doubt about it. We also can't let people be lazy because they're comfortable doing nothing. We got to find that balance. You wouldn't have that in any private sector job anywhere, right? So let's look at it from both sides and agree that, yeah, both sides need some work. But I will say, because leadership is so impactful, and because leadership has so much influence and control over everything, that has to be a priority in organizations, is fix that. And I think you'll start to see this thing balance out.
Yeah, I think what you described, I sense, and I was in law enforcement during COVID, I sense we just went into survival mode, because not only was it COVID, but it was George Floyd. And every time a police officer looked at somebody funny, it was making the news. And I kind of laughed, because use of force has remained relatively the same. Nothing's really changed, but it's all just got quiet all of a sudden. So the media drives the narrative. They make it loud when it helps them, or politicians make it loud when it helps them. There's a reason why every 4 years on the presidential election cycle, there was a high profile police event. Now, there wasn't in 2024. I'm kind of weirded out about why that was, but in 2020, 2016, 2012, we can go through Baltimore, and we can go through all of them. There's no reason to, but it was just a reason why in those years we dealt with those type of events. And I think what I sensed through COVID and through all that is we got into a survival mode. Like you said, do as little as possible, try to get through it. I think I agree with you. We have not successfully got back to, as you started this interview out with, Scott, back to the mission. And I think that is the answer to everything. That's the answer to your success, because the mission is not just crime and safety and taking care of citizens, but it's taking care of officers and giving them the resources. This is not complicated. You and I talk leadership all the time. This is not a complicated process. We just have to get back to the basics, do we not?
Basics and fundamentals, man. I gave a great keynote. I said I gave a great keynote.
Oh, it was great, Scott. I think I heard it. It was great.
It got good reviews. And it was all focused on fundamentals. Yep. And I open up a lot of my courses and classes and stuff on fundamentals. And whether I'm teaching a safety and a survival class, or I'm teaching a leadership class, it's all about fundamentals, right? Don't hold your flashlight in your gun hand. Fundamentals, safety. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Don't be a punk. Leadership, fundamentals, right? This isn't hard. We make it hard. We make it more difficult. Just go out and do your job. All these kids in the academy right now are not in the academy, and they're not going to come interview with you. And when you ask them the question, why do you want to be a police officer? They're not going to say, well, I'm hoping that in 5 years I'm a POS and I cause problems and I stir the pot and I'm the biggest toxic, what you got, and I'm lazy and I'm going to abuse sick time and I'm going to be an internal terrorist and blah, blah, blah. We allow that to happen, right? We allow that because we don't have strong leaders who want to step in and grab the bull by the horn and say, no, this isn't acceptable. Those kids don't want to do that. We allow that to happen. We allow them to become lazy because we forget about the fundamentals. Come out here, do your job, take care of your people. But it comes down to trust. It comes down to communication. And if they don't think, if there's no trust, if you're not communicating, then they're going to be very reluctant to want to do their jobs. Now, I said before, I'm all about this. You can't, though, because a guy tries to hold you accountable, you can't now all of a sudden pull up that card and be like, well, I can't do anything right around here. No. We gotta look at both sides here. But generally speaking, it all comes down to fundamentals. This is not hard. I still think, people call me crazy when I say this, I still think this is the greatest job in America. Where else can you come out, work outside, meet crazy people, have fun, put some bad people in jail, make the world a safer place? You're not going to find that job anywhere else. It's what, a lot of it too, I think, is what we make of it. Who's the person in the mirror looking back at you, right? Control this person in the mirror. Don't get too caught up in the drama that you can't fix. I think that'll start internally, right? And then maybe from there it just grows. Again, it's fundamentals.
No, you're 100% right. I'm just going to say you're right because we do campaigns all across the country for the agencies. There is not a lack of people that want to do this job. People want behind the scenes, what you just described. They watch it on TV. They go see movies about it. There are plenty of people, I'll call them kids, people in their 20s and 30s, even 40s, who say, I want to do this job. The issue is once they say they want to do this job, is sort of the barriers we just talked about. Leadership, communication, trust. And Scott, there's a reason why we have you on here, and you are a tip of the spear when it comes to leadership, recruiting, retention. You are it's an inspiration to many of our people that listen to us and watch us, and we talk some of the same lingo to our clients all the time, what you said. I can't appreciate you enough being here. How can people reach out to you? I know you have a lot going on besides being a chief and a father and a dad and a husband. Yeah. There's ways people can reach out to you. How can they reach out to you?
The easiest way to get a hold of me is through the website. It's crosdenconsulting.com, CROSDEN consulting.com. All contact information's on there. Happy to help anybody out, answer any questions. I don't know a lot, but I know a lot of people like you. So reach out if you have any questions. Sometimes I have found, through my own mentors, sometimes it's best if you need an opinion or you have a thought or an idea, maybe run it by someone who's outside of your four walls, maybe outside of your region, maybe outside of your profession, and figure out how to move forward, because everybody who's listening to this is going through something, and something's going to happen to somebody who's listening to this that's already occurred to somebody else. So figure out, reach out. Don't be afraid to ask questions. What worked for you? What didn't work for you? Collaborate when you can collaborate. And just everything in life, just remember those fundamentals. Remember the fundamentals, man. You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Scott Hughes, thank you so much. If you've been watching or you've been listening, thank you for being here. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.